The rain poured down in sheets as Olivia Reed stepped out of her sleek black Tesla. She barely glanced at the doorman holding an umbrella for her as she strutted toward Harmony Hall, one of the most exclusive music venues in the city. Her designer heels clicked against the pavement, the sound drowned by the storm. Olivia checked her watch and frowned. She was late for the charity gala, but when you're worth over $200 million, people tended to wait for you. At 32, she had everything money could buy. The penthouse apartment, the sports cars, the clothes, the connections. Everything except what she truly wanted. Someone who saw beyond her bank account. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd made her fortune creating Love Match, a dating app that supposedly connected people based on compatibility rather than looks or status. Yet here she was, alone and increasingly bitter about it. "Good evening, Ms. Reed," said the doorman, his voice calm and steady, despite the howling wind. "Welcome to Harmony Hall." Olivia finally looked at him properly. His name tag read Thomas. He was about her age, maybe a few years older, with warm brown eyes and a strong jawline. Handsome, she thought fleetingly, if you liked the regular guy type, which she didn't. Or at least that's what she told herself. "The gala has already started," Thomas continued, walking her to the entrance. "They're on the third performance of the evening." "I know I'm late," Olivia snapped, shaking raindrops from her coat. "Some of us have actual businesses to run." If her rudeness bothered him, Thomas didn't show it. He simply nodded and held the door open for her. Once inside, Olivia handed her coat to the coat check girl and smoothed down her deep blue evening gown. The sound of a violin drifted from the main hall, but Olivia paused to check her makeup in a decorative mirror. Perfect, as always. She'd spent enough on cosmetic procedures to ensure that. "Your seat is in the front row, center section," Thomas said, appearing at her side again. Apparently, he doubled as an usher. "I can show you—" "I know where my seat is," Olivia interrupted. "I donated $50,000 to this charity. They'd better have saved me a good spot." She started walking toward the main hall but stopped abruptly. Through the partially open doors, she could see that the performance was in full swing. The audience sat in rapt attention as a young violinist played on stage. Entering now would disrupt everything and draw attention to her lateness. For all her bravado, Olivia hated the thought of people judging her. She stepped back, frustrated. "Perhaps you'd like to wait until this piece concludes," Thomas suggested quietly. "It should only be a few more minutes. There's a small waiting area this way." Reluctantly, Olivia followed him to a side room where a few other latecomers sat. A waiter offered her champagne, which she took gratefully. The first sip helped calm her nerves. The second gave her courage. By the third, she was feeling more like herself again. "So," she said to Thomas, who stood discreetly by the door. "Doorman by day, usher by night? Trying to make ends meet?" "Something like that," he replied with a small smile. "Must be tough," she said, though her tone suggested she couldn't possibly understand such struggles. "It has its challenges and rewards like any job," Olivia laughed. "Please, don't pretend fetching umbrellas and opening doors is in any way comparable to running a tech company." Thomas raised an eyebrow but said nothing. His silence annoyed her more than any comeback would have. A soft bell chimed, indicating the end of the performance. "Your timing is perfect," Thomas said. "You can enter now between pieces." Olivia drained her champagne and handed him the empty glass as if he were a waiter. "Lead the way, then." Thomas guided her through the crowded hall toward the front row. Several people recognized Olivia, nodding or waving subtly. She was used to the attention. As a regular on the 30 under 30 lists and a fixture in business magazines, her face was well known in these circles. When they reached her assigned seat, Olivia frowned again. An elderly couple sat on either side of the empty chair, boxing her in. "This won't do," she whispered harshly to Thomas. "I need an aisle seat. I might have to leave early for an important call. I'm sorry, Ms. Reed, but the seating arrangement was finalized weeks ago. All seats are assigned." "Well, unassign someone else's seat," she insisted. "Surely you can move people around. The gala is sold out. Everyone here paid for their specific seats." Olivia's face flushed. The champagne had loosened her tongue more than she realized. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. Several nearby guests turned to look. "I could buy this entire building if I wanted to." Thomas remained frustratingly calm. "I'm well aware of who you are, Ms. Reed, but even you must follow the seating chart." Something in his tone, not rude but not submissive either, sparked a different emotion in Olivia. She wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by service staff. Most people either feared her money or wanted it. Thomas seemed to care about neither. "Fine," she said eventually, "but I expect better treatment next time." Thomas nodded politely and helped her to her seat. As Olivia settled in, smoothing her dress and nodding stiffly to her neighbors, she couldn't help but glance back at Thomas. He was already moving away, helping another guest, his posture perfect and his manner unfailingly polite. The next performance began, a pianist playing Chopin. Normally, Olivia would have been captivated. She had studied piano herself as a child and had genuine appreciation for classical music. But tonight, her thoughts kept drifting to the doorman with the steady gaze who hadn't seemed impressed by her wealth or intimidated by her attitude. At intermission, Olivia slipped out to the lobby for some air. The place was buzzing with wealthy patrons discussing the performances and their latest acquisitions. Conversations about vacation homes and private jets, the usual chatter of the ultra-rich. Olivia found herself wandering toward the back of the lobby where a magnificent grand piano sat unattended. Her fingers itched to play it, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. She used to love playing. Before building her company took over her life, before money became her only measure of success. As she stood gazing at the piano, Thomas appeared again, this time escorting an elderly man to the restroom. "Do you play?" Thomas asked when he returned, noticing her interest in the instrument. "I used to," Olivia admitted. "A long time ago. Why did you stop?" The question was simple but unexpectedly personal. Olivia rarely discussed her past with anyone. "No time," she said dismissively. "Running a successful company doesn't leave room for hobbies." Thomas nodded toward the piano. "That's a shame. Music feeds the soul in ways money can't." That comment irritated her again. "Easy for you to say. I bet you've never had to worry about managing millions of dollars or the pressure of thousands of employees depending on you for their livelihoods." "You're right," Thomas agreed. "I haven't, but I've had other pressures." Something in his tone made Olivia curious despite herself. "Like what?" Before he could answer, the lights flickered, signaling the end of intermission. Guests began making their way back to the main hall. "You should return to your seat," Thomas said. "The second half is about to begin." Frustrated by the interruption, Olivia stepped closer to the piano. On impulse, she ran her fingers across the keys, playing a quick scale. The notes rang out clear and beautiful. "I used to be quite good, you know," she said, more to herself than to Thomas. "I believe you," he replied. Olivia turned to him, suddenly feeling reckless. "What about you? Do you play?" Sometimes," she echoed. "Either you play or you don't." Thomas smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face. "In that case, yes, I do play." Olivia looked him up and down, taking in his uniform and polished shoes. An idea formed in her champagne-loosened mind. Part challenge, part joke. "I don't believe you," she said. "Someone like you, playing something like this?" She gestured to the grand piano. "Prove it." Thomas glanced around the emptying lobby. "This isn't the time or place, Ms. Reed." "Of course it isn't," Olivia smirked. "Because you can't actually play. You just want to seem interesting." Something flashed in Thomas's eyes, pride perhaps, or determination. "I can play," he said quietly. Olivia laughed, the sound echoing in the marble lobby. "Sure you can. Tell you what, Doorman. If you can play that piano, truly play it, not just peck out chopsticks or heart and soul, I'll marry you on the spot." The words hung in the air between them, absurd and impulsive. Olivia wasn't sure why she'd said them. Perhaps to mock him, perhaps to see if she could crack his professional demeanor, or perhaps because somewhere deep inside she longed to be surprised by someone, anyone. Thomas held her gaze for a long moment. Then to her surprise he laughed too, a warm, rich sound. "That's quite an offer, Ms. Reed," he said. "But I think we both know you don't mean it." "Try me," she challenged, even though she knew he was right. It was just a taunt, a silly joke, wasn't it? Before Thomas could respond, the final bell chimed. The lobby was now empty except for them. "You should go in," he said. "They're waiting for you." Olivia hesitated, suddenly reluctant to end their strange conversation. "What's your full name, Thomas?" "Thomas Chen," he answered. "Well, Thomas Chen," she said, turning to walk toward the main hall. "My offer stands. If you can play, I'll marry you. But we both know that's never going to happen. As she walked away, she didn't see the look on Thomas's face, a mixture of amusement and determination that might have warned her not to underestimate. The man behind the uniform, Olivia, couldn't focus on the music during the second half of the gala. Her mind kept drifting back to Thomas and their strange exchange. She'd made that ridiculous marriage challenge as a joke, of course. The idea of marrying a doorman was absurd. Yet something about him lingered in her thoughts, his calm confidence, his unimpressed demeanor. In her world, everyone either feared her or wanted something from her. Thomas had done neither. When the final performance ended and the audience rose for a standing ovation, Olivia remained seated, clapping mechanically. She checked her phone, 3 missed calls from her assistant and a dozen emails marked urgent. The usual. None of it seemed important tonight. As guests began filing out, Olivia deliberately stayed behind, answering emails until the crowd thinned. She wasn't sure why. Perhaps she hoped to run into Thomas again. To apologize? To double down on her challenge? She wasn't sure. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the streets glistened wet under the streetlights. Olivia stepped out of Harmony Hall and looked around. Thomas was nowhere to be seen. Part of her felt relieved, another part disappointed. "Did you enjoy the performances, Ms. Reed?" She turned to find Thomas standing by the valet station. "They were fine," she said, trying to sound indifferent. "The violinist in the first half was a bit showy for my taste." Thomas nodded. Technique without emotion. I noticed that too. Something about his observation surprised her. It was exactly what she had thought but hadn't articulated. "Your car will be here shortly," he added, nodding toward the valet who was running to fetch her Tesla. "Thank you," Olivia said, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. When was the last time she'd genuinely thanked service staff? She couldn't remember. An awkward silence fell between them. Olivia found herself wanting to say something, anything, to keep the conversation going, but nothing came to mind. Her usual confidence had deserted her. "About earlier," Thomas finally said, "with the piano." Olivia waved her hand dismissively. "Just a silly joke. Don't worry about it." "Actually," Thomas said, his voice quiet but clear, "I was going to ask if you'd like to hear me play sometime." Olivia's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Completely. You actually play the piano? Well enough that you're not embarrassed to play for a stranger?" Thomas smiled, that same genuine smile that transformed his face. "I do, and I'm not. Though you're not exactly a stranger anymore, Ms. Reed." Olivia felt a flutter of something unfamiliar. Interest, curiosity? She wasn't sure. "When?" she asked before she could stop herself. "I'm playing tomorrow night at the Blue Note. It's a small jazz club in—" "I know what the Blue Note is," Olivia interrupted, though in truth she'd never been there. It wasn't the kind of place people in her circle frequented. 8 o'clock, Thomas said as her car pulled up. "If you're interested." Without waiting for her answer, he opened the car door for her. Olivia slid into the driver's seat, feeling strangely off balance. She drove away without looking back, but the invitation echoed in her mind all the way home. The next day passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. Olivia moved through them on autopilot, her thoughts repeatedly straying to Thomas and his invitation. By 6 o'clock, she had decided not to go. What was the point? So he could play a few jazz tunes, so what? It wasn't as if she was actually going to marry him if he turned out to be good. By 7, she had changed her mind. Curiosity got the better of her. She told herself she was just going to see if he'd been bluffing. Nothing more. The Blue Note was nothing like the upscale venues Olivia usually frequented. Tucked away on a side street, the small club had a worn-in feel. Comfortable rather than shabby. The hostess led her to a small table near the back. On stage, a quartet was setting up. Drums, bass, saxophone, and piano. And there was Thomas, adjusting the piano bench, dressed not in his doorman's uniform but in dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt. He looked different, more at ease. Olivia slouched in her seat, hoping he wouldn't spot her. She wasn't ready to talk to him yet, wasn't sure what she would say. The lights dimmed and the quartet began to play. A standard jazz tune, nothing remarkable. Thomas played competently, his fingers moving easily over the keys. Olivia felt a pang of disappointment. He was good, yes, but nothing special. Nothing worth upending her life for. Then, after a few numbers, the rest of the quartet took a break, leaving Thomas alone at the piano. The room quieted. Thomas looked up, his eyes scanning the audience. For a moment, Olivia thought he had spotted her, but his gaze moved on. "This next piece," he said into the microphone, his voice soft but clear, "is one I composed. It's called Rain on Glass." And then he began to play and everything changed. The music that flowed from his fingers was unlike anything Olivia had heard before. It was rain, not the violent storm from the night before, but a gentle, thoughtful rain, the kind that makes you want to stay home and read a good book. It was melancholy without being sad, hopeful without being naive. Olivia sat transfixed. This wasn't just good piano playing. This was artistry. This was soul. As the final notes faded, the club remained silent for a heartbeat before erupting in applause. Olivia found herself clapping harder than anyone, tears stinging her eyes. She couldn't remember the last time music had moved her like this. Thomas nodded humbly at the applause, then stepped away from the piano as the rest of the quartet returned to the stage. As he made his way to the bar, his eyes finally found Olivia. He looked surprised, then pleased. He held up a finger, "Wait," and then continued to the bar. A few minutes later, he approached her table, 2 drinks in hand. "You came," he said, setting 1 drink in front of her. "I did," Olivia replied, trying to sound casual. "That piece you played, did you really compose it?" Thomas nodded, taking the seat across from her. "Last year. It was," Olivia searched for the right word. Beautiful seemed too simple, magnificent too pretentious.
"Real," she finally said.
"It felt real. Thank you," Thomas said, and she could tell he understood what she meant. "It means a lot coming from you." "From me?" Olivia laughed. "I'm just a tech CEO. I don't know anything about music." "You played once," Thomas reminded her. "And based on how you talked about tonight's performances, I'd say you know more than you let on." Olivia took a sip of her drink to hide her surprise. He was right. Despite her years away from the piano, she still had an ear for music, still could tell the difference between technical proficiency and true artistry. "So," Thomas said, a hint of mischief in his eyes, "about that marriage proposal." Olivia nearly choked on her drink. "That wasn't a proposal," she sputtered. "It was a joke. A stupid, thoughtless joke." "I'm sorry," Thomas laughed. "I know. I'm teasing you, Olivia." It was the first time he had used her first name, and something about it felt right. "How did you learn to play like that?" she asked, eager to change the subject. Thomas took a drink, his expression growing more serious. "I studied at Juilliard, actually." "Juilliard?" Olivia couldn't hide her shock. "But then, why are you working as a doorman?" A shadow passed over Thomas's face. "Life happens," he said. "My mother got sick during my 3rd year, cancer. The medical bills piled up and I had to drop out to work full-time." "I'm sorry," Olivia said and meant it. "Is she—" "She's okay now," Thomas assured her. "In remission for 4 years. But by the time she recovered, my scholarship was gone, and the classical music world had moved on to the next prodigy." The quartet started playing again, filling the silence between them. Olivia found herself seeing Thomas in a completely new light. Not as a service worker to be dismissed or even as a surprisingly talented pianist, but as a person who had faced hard choices and made sacrifices. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Giving up your career for your mother?" Thomas considered the question. "No," he said finally. "I regret that I had to choose. But I would make the same choice again. Some things matter more than success." The concept was foreign to Olivia, who had always put her career first. She'd missed her own father's funeral because of an important investor meeting. At the time, it had seemed like the only choice. Now looking at Thomas, she wasn't so sure. "You could go back," she suggested. "It's not too late," Thomas smiled sadly. "The classical world doesn't work that way. Too many young talents coming up, too few spots at the top, but I'm okay with where I am. I still get to play, just not on the stages I once dreamed of." Olivia wanted to argue, to insist that talent like his shouldn't be wasted, but she held her tongue. Who was she to tell him how to live his life? "Will you play again?" she asked instead. "At Harmony Hall, I mean. I'd like to hear you on that grand piano." Thomas looked surprised by the request. "I doubt the management would allow it." "They would if I asked," Olivia said confidently. "Benefits of being a major donor." Thomas studied her face as if trying to determine her motives. "Why would you do that for me?" It was a good question. Why did she care? Why was she sitting in this small jazz club talking to her doorman instead of networking with important people or working late as she usually did? Because I want to hear you play again, she said simply. No strings attached, no ridiculous marriage challenges, just music. Thomas held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. I'd like that, he said. And in that moment something shifted between them. Not romance, not yet, but a connection, a recognition of something genuine in a world that too often felt fake. For Olivia Reed, tech millionaire with everything money could buy, it felt like the most valuable thing she'd found in years. A week passed before Olivia returned to Harmony Hall. This time, she arrived early, dressed in a simple black dress rather than the flashy designer gown she'd worn to the gala. She'd spent the week thinking about Thomas, about his music, about the choices that had shaped his life so differently from hers. She'd also made some calls. As promised, she'd spoken to the management of Harmony Hall. It had taken some persuasion and a hint about increasing her annual donation, but they had agreed to let Thomas play the grand piano in the lobby after hours. No audience except for her, Ms. Reed. Thomas greeted her at the entrance back in his doorman uniform. If anyone had seen them talking at the Blue Note, he gave no indication. Professional as always, Thomas, she replied with a nod. Is everything arranged for later? Yes, the manager said we can use the hall after the evening performance ends, around 10. Perfect. Olivia hesitated, then added, Thank you for agreeing to play. Thomas smiled. Thank you for arranging it. It's been years since I played a piano of that caliber. Olivia went inside for the evening's symphony performance, but she barely heard the music. Her mind was on what would come after. She found herself watching the clock, counting down the minutes. When the performance ended and the audience filed out, Olivia remained in her seat. The ushers knew to expect her. Eventually the hall emptied, the lights dimmed except for those around the grand piano in the lobby, and Thomas appeared, now dressed in dark slacks and a white button-down shirt. Ready? Olivia asked, standing up. Thomas nodded, but he looked nervous, a new expression on his usually composed face. They walked together to the lobby, their footsteps echoing in the empty hall. The grand piano waited, its lid propped open, its black surface gleaming under the lights. Thomas approached it with reverence, running his fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. It's a Steinway Model D, he said softly, the same model I played at Juilliard. Olivia took a seat on a nearby bench, giving him space. Play whatever you want, she said. I'm just here to listen. Thomas sat at the bench, adjusted it, and then placed his hands on the keys. He closed his eyes for a moment as if gathering himself. Then he began to play. The piece was classical. Chopin, Olivia thought, though she couldn't name it. The notes filled the empty lobby, bouncing off the marble floors and high ceilings. The acoustics were perfect. But more than the sound, it was Thomas himself who captivated her. He transformed at the piano. His usual reserved demeanor gave way to something passionate, something alive. As the piece built to its climax, Thomas's body swayed with the music, his face expressing what words could not. This wasn't just playing notes on a page. This was communication in its purest form. Olivia felt goosebumps rise on her arms. When the final chord faded, neither of them spoke. The silence felt sacred somehow. Thomas's hands remained on the keys, as if reluctant to break contact with the instrument. Finally, he turned to look at her. Thank you, he said simply. Olivia shook her head. No, thank you. That was... She struggled for words again. I've been to hundreds of concerts, Thomas. Professional performances by world-famous pianists, and none of them moved me like that. Thomas looked down, a flush creeping up his neck. It's the piano. An instrument like this makes anyone sound good? Don't do that, Olivia said sharply. Don't diminish your talent. You're extraordinary and you know it. Their eyes met and something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. Can I ask you something? Olivia said after a moment. Of course. Are you happy? Working as a doorman, playing in small clubs. Is it enough? Thomas considered the question carefully. Most days, yes. I have enough to live on. I still get to play music. My mother is healthy. By any reasonable measure, I should be content, he paused. But sometimes, when I play on a piano like this, when I remember what might have been, no, it's not enough. His honesty surprised her. Then why not try again? Audition for orchestras, apply for grants, whatever it takes. It's not that simple, Thomas said. The classical music world has a long memory. I was the promising student who dropped out, who chose family over career. That story doesn't fit the narrative of a dedicated artist. So change the narrative, Olivia challenged. Tell a new story, Thomas laughed softly. Says the woman who controls the media narrative about her company. Not all of us have PR teams, Olivia. True, she conceded, but all of us have choices. Thomas turned back to the piano and began playing again, something soft and thoughtful. What about you? He asked as his fingers moved over the keys. Are you happy? No one had asked Olivia that question in years. People asked about her company, her investments, her next big move. Never about her happiness. I'm successful, she said automatically. That's not what I asked. Olivia watched his hands on the keys, buying time. I don't know, she finally admitted. I have everything I thought would make me happy, but sometimes it feels empty. Thomas nodded but didn't press further. He continued playing the melody, wistful now. I used to play, Olivia said suddenly. Did I tell you that? Not like you, I wasn't that good. But I loved it. My mother taught me. What happened? She died when I was 16. After that, playing just reminded me of her, of what I'd lost. So I stopped. I focused on computers instead. They made sense when nothing else did. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Olivia never talked about her mother, not even with her closest friends. Yet here she was telling this Doorman, this brilliant, thwarted pianist, about the most painful chapter of her life. I'm sorry, Thomas said, his playing growing softer, supporting her words rather than competing with them. It was a long time ago. Some losses stay with us forever, Thomas said. They shape us. Yes, Olivia nodded, feeling understood. They do. Thomas's playing slowed, then stopped. He turned on the bench to face her fully. Play something, he said. Olivia shook her head. No, I couldn't. I haven't touched a piano in years. All the more reason to try now. Thomas stood and gestured to the bench. Just a few notes. See how it feels, Olivia hesitated. Part of her wanted to run from the lobby, from the memories the piano would surely unleash. But another part, a part that had been silent for too long, urged her forward. Slowly she approached the piano and sat down. The bench was still warm from Thomas. She placed her hands on the keys, surprised by how familiar it felt despite all the years. I don't remember any pieces, she warned. Just improvise, Thomas suggested, standing beside the piano. Play what you feel. Olivia pressed a key, then another. Simple notes at first, disconnected. But then something clicked, and she found herself playing a melody. Not polished or complex, but genuine. A melody that spoke of loss and longing and maybe, just maybe, hope. She played for several minutes, losing herself in the music. When she finally stopped, she was surprised to find tears on her cheeks. She wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. That was beautiful, Thomas said softly. It was rough, Olivia corrected. Unpolished. True, Thomas agreed with a smile. But still beautiful. Like someone speaking from the heart after a long silence. Olivia stood up, suddenly overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't name. I should go, she said. It's late. Thomas didn't try to stop her. Thank you for tonight, he said. For the chance to play this piano. For listening. Will you be here tomorrow? Olivia asked, surprising herself with the question. At the door, I mean. Yes, my shift starts at noon. Olivia nodded. Good, I might stop by, if that's okay. I'd like that, Thomas said. As Olivia walked toward the exit, she paused and turned back. Thomas, that piece you played first. What was it? Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor, he answered. It was my mother's favorite, Olivia said softly. She used to play it all the time. Their eyes met across the lobby, and in that moment the distance between them, millionaire and doorman, success and sacrifice, seemed to shrink. They were just two people who had lost something precious, who had found their way through music, who were, perhaps, finding their way to each other. Good night, Thomas, Olivia said. Good night. Olivia, he replied. As she stepped out into the night, Olivia felt lighter somehow, as if a weight she hadn't known she was carrying had begun to lift. For the first time in years, she was looking forward to tomorrow. Over the next few weeks, Olivia found reasons to visit Harmony Hall almost daily. Sometimes she attended performances. Sometimes she claimed to be meeting with the management about her donations, and sometimes she didn't bother with excuses at all. The real reason was always Thomas. Their friendship grew in small moments. Brief conversations when he opened the door for her, coffee in the staff break room during his lunch breaks, and late-night piano sessions after the hall closed. Thomas never asked why a busy CEO suddenly had so much free time, and Olivia never explained that she had started delegating tasks she used to insist on handling herself. One evening in late autumn, Olivia waited in the now familiar lobby as Thomas finished his shift. They had fallen into a comfortable routine. Once a week, the management allowed them to use the grand piano after hours, Olivia's donor privilege as she called it with a wink. "Sorry I'm late," Thomas said, hurrying in from the staff room, changed from his uniform into casual clothes. One of the other doormen called in sick, so I had to stay longer. "No problem," Olivia replied. She had brought takeout from a nearby Thai restaurant and set it out on a small table near the piano. "Dinner and music tonight?" Thomas smiled. "Sounds perfect." They ate first, talking about their days. Olivia found herself sharing things she never discussed with anyone. Her frustrations with her board of directors, her doubts about a new feature for her app, her loneliness despite being surrounded by people. Thomas listened in that attentive way of his, offering thoughtful comments without trying to fix everything. In return, he told her about his mother's latest doctor's appointment, all clear, still in remission, his upcoming gig at the Blue Note, and a new piece he was composing. "Play it for me," Olivia said when they'd finished eating. Thomas hesitated. "It's not ready yet. I don't care. I want to hear it in progress. It's interesting to see how something develops." Thomas relented, settling at the piano. "It's inspired by you, actually," he said, not looking at her. "By our conversations." Before Olivia could respond, he began to play. The piece started with simple, precise notes, like Olivia herself controlled and measured. But then it opened up, became more complex, more emotional. There were moments of doubt, of questioning, and then resolution. Not perfect, but real. Olivia listened, transfixed. No one had ever created anything for her before. Sure, employees had made presentations and reports. Designers had created products to her specifications. But this was different. This was how Thomas saw her. Not as Olivia Reed, CEO, but as Olivia, the woman. When he finished, she didn't speak immediately, letting the notes hang in the air between them. "That's how you see me?" she finally asked. Thomas nodded. "Parts of you. The parts you've let me see. And what do you think of those parts?" Thomas turned to face her fully. "I think you're extraordinary. Not because of your success or your money, but because of who you are underneath all that. The person who still remembers her mother's favorite Chopin piece. The person who cried playing the piano after years away from it. The person who listens to a doorman's dreams with genuine interest." Olivia felt exposed, seen in a way that both frightened and thrilled her. "I'm not used to people seeing past the CEO," she admitted. "Most people don't try," Thomas said. "But I'm not most people." "No," Olivia agreed. "You're definitely not." A comfortable silence fell between them. Olivia moved to sit beside him on the piano bench. "Teach me something," she said. "Something simple." "Put your hands here." Thomas guided her fingers to the keys. His touch was gentle, his hands warm against hers. "This is a basic C major scale." Olivia followed his instructions, fumbling a bit. Their shoulders touched as they sat side by side, and she was acutely aware of his presence. Solid, patient, real. "I've been thinking," she said as she practiced the scale. "About what you said before about changing the narrative." Thomas waited, letting her continue at her own pace. "What if there was a way for you to return to music professionally? Not the traditional route with orchestras and concert halls, but something different." "I'm listening," Thomas said, his voice carefully neutral. Olivia turned to look at him. "My company is expanding into new areas. We're developing an educational platform, teaching everything from coding to cooking. What if we added music? What if you developed a series of piano lessons from beginner to advanced?" Thomas frowned slightly. "Online tutorials? There are thousands of those already." "Not like this would be," Olivia insisted. "Not with your background, your approach to music. Not with professional production values and marketing behind it." She grew more animated as she spoke. "We could record you here on this piano. We could tell your story. The Juilliard prodigy who chose family over fame. That's compelling, Thomas. People would connect with that." I don't know, Thomas said, looking down at the keys. Teaching strangers through a screen isn't the same as performing. It could be just the beginning, Olivia pressed. A way to get your name out there again, to build an audience. You could do live master classes, special performances. We could create something new together. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Why would you do this for me? He finally asked. You barely know me. The question caught Olivia off guard. Why was she so invested in his future? Why did it matter to her what this man, who had been a stranger just weeks ago, did with his talent? Because you've given me something valuable, she said honestly. You've reminded me that there's more to life than spreadsheets and stock prices. That beauty matters. That choices have costs, she paused. And because I believe in you. I believe your music should be heard. Thomas studied her face as if searching for hidden motives. Finding none, he nodded slowly. I'll think about it. That's all I ask, Olivia said, relieved he hadn't dismissed the idea outright. They continued with the piano lesson, Thomas patiently guiding her through simple exercises. Their hands occasionally brushed, sending a current of awareness through Olivia each time. You're a good teacher, she observed after successfully playing a simple melody. You're a quick learner, he countered. Most adults are too self-conscious to really try something new. I've never been afraid of looking foolish in pursuit of something worthwhile, Olivia said. Thomas laughed. Is that the secret to your success? Part of it, Olivia admitted. That and endless stubbornness. I believe it, Thomas said, his eyes crinkling with amusement. As the evening drew to a close, Olivia found herself reluctant to leave. These hours with Thomas had become the highlight of her week, a respite from the constant pressure of her position. There's a fundraiser here next Friday, she said, as they packed up the takeout containers, for music education in public schools. Would you come with me? As my guest, not as the doorman. The invitation hung in the air between them. They both knew it would change things, making their friendship public, acknowledging that whatever was growing between them mattered enough to step into the light. People will talk, Thomas said carefully, the millionaire and the doorman. Let them, Olivia replied with more confidence than she felt. I've never cared much for other people's opinions. Haven't you? Thomas asked gently. I think you care very much. That's why you work so hard, why you maintain that perfect image. His insight was uncomfortable but accurate. Olivia had always cared deeply about how she was perceived, as competent, successful, untouchable. Maybe it's time I stopped, she said. Maybe it's time I lived more honestly. Thomas considered her words. Okay, he said finally. I'll come to the fundraiser with you, but not as your charity case. Never that, Olivia assured him. As my friend, someone I respect and admire, Thomas smiled. I can live with that. As they walked together to the exit, a security guard nodded at them, used to their after-hours sessions by now. Outside, the night was cold, winter approaching rapidly. My car's around the corner, Olivia said. Can I drop you somewhere? Thomas shook his head. I like the subway. Gives me time to think. They stood facing each other, neither quite ready to say goodnight. Thank you for the lesson, Olivia said. Thank you for listening, Thomas replied, to my music and my story. On impulse, Olivia leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Good night, Thomas. Good night, Olivia, he said, a hint of color rising in his face. As she walked to her car, Olivia found herself smiling. Something was changing in her life, something unexpected and unplanned. For a woman who had built her fortune on controlling every variable, it was terrifying and thrilling. For the first time in years, Olivia Reed wasn't following a carefully crafted blueprint for success. She was simply following her heart. The night of the fundraiser arrived with a light snowfall that dusted the city in white. Olivia stood in her penthouse apartment, smoothing down her dark green evening gown and checking her appearance one last time in the mirror. She had opted for minimal jewelry and subtle makeup, wanting to look elegant but not flashy. Tonight wasn't about impressing potential investors or business partners. Tonight was about Thomas. Her phone buzzed with a text message. I'm downstairs. Olivia grabbed her coat and purse, feeling an unfamiliar flutter of nerves. This was ridiculous. She had given speeches to thousands of people, negotiated multi-million-dollar deals, and faced hostile takeover attempts without breaking a sweat. Yet the thought of walking into Harmony Hall with Thomas by her side made her palms damp. When the elevator doors opened to the lobby, she saw him immediately. Thomas stood near the entrance, dressed in a well-fitted black suit she'd never seen before. He looked different but entirely himself, dignified and handsome. "You clean up nice," Olivia said, approaching him with a smile. "So do you," Thomas replied, his eyes taking in her appearance. "Though you always look nice." In the car they sat close but not touching, both aware of the shift occurring between them. They were crossing a line tonight, moving from private friendship to public acknowledgement of whatever this was becoming. "Nervous?" Thomas asked as the car pulled up to Harmony Hall. "A little," Olivia admitted. "You?" Terrified, Thomas said with a small laugh. "I've opened this door for hundreds of people. I've never walked through it as a guest." Olivia reached over and squeezed his hand. "Well, there's a first time for everything." Cameras flashed as they stepped onto the red carpet. The local press always covered these high society fundraisers. Olivia felt Thomas stiffen beside her but kept her hand firmly on his arm, guiding him through the gauntlet of photographers. Inside, the hall had been transformed. Round tables filled the space where rows of seats usually stood, each decorated with elegant flower arrangements and glowing candles. A small orchestra played softly on stage. Heads turned as Olivia and Thomas made their way to their assigned table. She recognized the moment people realized who her companion was, the subtle widening of eyes, the whispered comments behind hands. She held her head high, daring anyone to say something directly. Olivia, a woman in a sparkly blue dress, approached them. "I was hoping you'd be here tonight. We need to discuss the Women's Leadership Summit next month." "Hello, Nancy," Olivia replied. "This is Thomas Chen." "Thomas, this is Nancy Williams, head of the Business Women's Association." Thomas extended his hand. "Pleased to meet you." Nancy shook his hand, curiosity evident in her expression. "Thomas, you look so familiar." "Thomas works at Harmony Hall," Olivia said smoothly. "He's also a brilliant pianist." Understanding dawned on Nancy's face. "Oh, you're the doorman. I thought you looked familiar." To his credit, Thomas didn't flinch. "That's right," he said calmly. "Among other things." Before Nancy could respond, Olivia steered Thomas away. "We should find our seats." "Lovely seeing you, Nancy." As they made their way through the crowd, Thomas leaned close to Olivia's ear. "That's going to happen all night, isn't it?" "Probably," Olivia confirmed. "Does it bother you?" Thomas considered the question. "Not if it doesn't bother you." At their table, they were joined by several of Olivia's acquaintances, a venture capitalist, a magazine editor, a retired opera singer, and their respective partners. Introductions were made, with Olivia presenting Thomas simply as "my friend Thomas Chen." The venture capitalist, Peter, squinted at Thomas. "Have we met before?" "You look familiar." "Thomas works at Harmony Hall," the magazine editor Lisa said before Olivia could intervene. "He's the doorman, right?" "I recognize you now." A brief, awkward silence fell over the table. Thomas broke it with a smile. "That's right. But tonight I'm here as Olivia's guest. And a musician," Olivia added firmly. "Thomas studied at Juilliard." The retired opera singer Eleanor perked up at this. "Juilliard? What's your instrument?" "Piano," Thomas replied. "Thomas is being modest," Olivia said. "He's extraordinary. I heard him play Chopin's ballad in G minor, and it brought me to tears." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "That's a challenging piece. One of my favorites." The conversation shifted to music, with Eleanor asking Thomas thoughtful questions about his training and influences. The initial awkwardness faded as Thomas spoke about his passion with quiet confidence. Dinner was served, wine flowed, and the fundraiser moved along with speeches about the importance of music education. Olivia found herself watching Thomas more than the stage, noting how he fit into this world that should have felt foreign to him but somehow didn't. When the formal program ended and the dancing began, Thomas turned to Olivia. "Would you like to dance?" She nodded, taking his offered hand. On the dance floor, he led with surprising grace. "You never mentioned you could dance," Olivia said as they moved together. Thomas smiled. "Juilliard isn't just about playing instruments. Movement classes are part of the curriculum. You're full of surprises." As they danced, Olivia became aware of the glances and whispers around them. The story was spreading through the room. Olivia Reed, tech millionaire, was here with her doorman. "People are talking about us," Thomas murmured, clearly aware of it too. "Let them. Olivia said, echoing her words from before, but this time she meant it. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, she truly didn't care what others thought. The only opinion that mattered was that of the man holding her. The evening progressed, and despite the initial curiosity and gossip, most people were polite. A few even engaged Thomas in genuine conversation once they realized he was more than just Olivia's unusual date. Near the end of the night, Eleanor, the retired opera singer, approached them again. "Thomas, would you play something for us? I've spoken to the organizers and they've agreed to let you use the piano." "I'd love to hear you play." Thomas looked startled by the request. "Oh, I don't know if that's appropriate." "Please," Eleanor insisted. "Consider it my donation to the cause. I miss hearing real passion in playing." Thomas looked to Olivia, who nodded encouragingly. "Show them who you really are," she said softly. After a moment's hesitation, Thomas agreed. Word spread quickly, and people gathered around the grand piano as Thomas took his seat. The room quieted. "This piece," Thomas said into the microphone someone had set up, "is something I've been working on recently. It's called New Beginnings." And then he began to play, not Chopin or Mozart or any of the classical pieces he had studied, but his own composition. It was beautiful, complex, yet accessible, filled with hope and possibility. Olivia recognized elements of the piece he had played for her. The one he'd said was inspired by their conversations, but it had evolved into something more complete, more resolved. The audience listened in absolute silence, many with eyes closed, transported by the music. When Thomas finished, there was a heartbeat of quiet before the room erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, some with tears in their eyes. Eleanor was the first to reach him, clasping his hands in hers. "That was magnificent," she said. "Truly magnificent." Others crowded around, asking questions, offering congratulations. Thomas handled the sudden attention with grace, but his eyes kept finding Olivia's across the room. In those glances was a shared understanding. This moment was changing everything. Later, as the fundraiser wound down and guests began to leave, Thomas found Olivia by the coat check. "You were right," he said, a new light in his eyes. "About changing the narrative. About taking control of my own story." Olivia smiled. "What did I tell you? People respond to authenticity." "I've made a decision," Thomas continued, "about your offer. The educational platform, the piano lessons. I want to do it." "Really?" Olivia couldn't hide her delight. "Yes, but I have a condition." "Name it." "I want creative control," Thomas said firmly. "I don't want to make simplified versions of classical pieces for easy consumption. I want to teach real music with all its complexity and challenge." "Done," Olivia agreed immediately. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Thomas took her hand. "Thank you for believing in me, for seeing me." "Thank you for the same," Olivia replied softly. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the city in a fresh blanket of white. Possibilities stretched before them as pure and unmarked as the snow. "What happens now?" Thomas asked as they waited for Olivia's car. "Now?" Olivia looked up at him, snowflakes catching in her eyelashes. "Now we write the next chapter together." "I like the sound of that," Thomas said. He hesitated, then leaned down and kissed her. Not on the cheek this time, but gently on the lips. It was a question as much as a gesture. Olivia answered by kissing him back, her hand rising to his face. When they parted, both were smiling. "Remember when we first met?" Olivia asked. "When I said if you could play, I'd marry you?" Thomas laughed. "Your exact words were, 'If you can play that piano, truly play it, I'll marry you on the spot.' As I recall, it was meant as an insult." "Well, the jury's in," Olivia said, her eyes sparkling. "You can truly play. Are you proposing, Ms. Reed?" Thomas asked, eyebrows raised in amusement. "Not yet," Olivia replied, "but I'm not ruling it out for the future." Thomas wrapped an arm around her as the car pulled up. "I can live with that. For now, I'm just happy to be here, playing a new song with you." As they drove away from Harmony Hall, Olivia rested her head on Thomas's shoulder, feeling a contentment she had never known in all her years of striving and succeeding. The millionaire and the doorman, an unlikely pair brought together by music, by chance, by the courage to see beyond labels and expectations. It wasn't the ending either of them had planned for their lives. It was something much better, a new beginning composed note by note, day by day together.